So, as a politician, since you are new at this, I mean, what would you, if you look back at your short tenure, I mean, what would you say you look back and go, this is what I'm most proud of?
The mental health parity bill, getting that passed in my first term. And what that bill does is it says that people who have mental health problems get the same insurance coverage as if they have a physical problem. And that bill was first introduced, I believe, by Peggy Rosenzweig in 1995 by a Republican, and was never able to advance in the Assembly, never even got a hearing, and introduced it, got it passed with bipartisan support, and I really had to work across the aisle to get that one done.
Had you dealt with Senator Darling in the past?
Oh yeah, for many years. In fact, 20 years ago, when she was still a state representative, my daughter carried a banner for her in a 4th of July parade in Whitefish Bay.
Really?
So I had a lot of positive interactions with Alberta Darling over the years, but she was a different Alberta Darling than she is now. She was someone that we could count on for public education support and looking out for some vulnerable populations, and that's been changing over the years. But even last term, she and I were co-authors on a bill that helped a local school district, and I thought she was someone that there were some things perhaps we could work together on, but I've really been concerned with the direction she's been moving over the years. I think since we saw some moderate Democratic women, or Republican women being taken out, that she decided she would just move to the right.
The perception, I think, by a lot of people is that this recall election in a lot of ways is about two big actions, and that one is the collective bargaining piece for the Republicans, and the other is the Democratic senators who went to Illinois. Is that a fair way to look at this election?
I don't think so. I think it's a very narrow way to look at this election. Well, I think that certainly called a lot of attention to Wisconsin and everything that was going on, and it was like, oh my gosh, they're doing this so quickly and in such a short amount of time, taking away 50 years of history in our state without really good public input and discussion. I think that had a shock effect, but it's been a series of actions and policy decisions that Senator Darling has made since January that has really driven this whole recall and are the issues that are behind this whole campaign.
Do you think it's fair to recall a senator or elected official based on votes and not something like misconduct?
The way our laws are written is that citizens can initiate a recall petition if they believe their representative, their senator, is not representing them in some way or they're dissatisfied with them. And we look at the PTOC recall, that was a single vote, and the efforts in the past against Senator Holperin was for a single vote. So it's unfortunate that sometimes it is a single vote, but as I said, it is not a single vote that is driving this recall and this campaign against Alberta Darling. It is a real failure to represent a lot of the people in the district who feel their voices haven't been heard, and they're concerned with, that they're balancing the budget, as I've said over and over again, on the backs of people who can least afford it.
There's an ad, there's a couple ads right now that talk about a vote that you made to cut almost $300 million in public education. Mm-hmm. There was an article recently in the Journal that confirmed that those numbers are accurate in that way. Is that a vote you feel like you need to defend?
It was in the last budget. When I was elected, we had a $6.6 billion deficit. It was a $6.6 billion deficit before I got there. So, it's interesting that I think Alberta Darling is pinning that on me somehow, and I was a nurse back when that deficit was occurring. It was an incredible responsibility that how do we fill this hole? We have to have a balanced budget. And so there were very painful cuts, and some cuts were 5 to 10%. The cuts to education were 3.5%. And yeah, it was an awful painful cut. I felt like it's not something I want to cut, but with $6.6 billion, that happened.
Not necessarily what has been her biggest change, but what is now the biggest difference between you and Senator Darling?
I think I'm someone who's going to look out for the middle class families, for kids, for seniors, for people with disabilities. I'm not in this for, she's been here for 20 years. She has so much seniority, so much power as co-chair of Joint Finance, and that she failed to stand up to some of the extreme measures that were happening is really concerning me. I'm not afraid to stand up to people. I'm not in this for politics. I said I'm a nurse. I'm late entry into this whole thing, and I entered it because I thought people weren't paying attention to the things that really mattered. And I'm not going to talk just in sound bites. And I'm so concerned that's all that's happening with Senator Darling.